Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my in my trials. I don't know what that is. But welcome back. Today it is Poetry Thursday, a day for me to talk about the wonderful and unusual poetry that exists in the world. Sometimes it's normal, sometimes it's not normal. I would say it leans more towards normal today, just because, I'm looking at a bunch of, a school, really, of normie poets, I would consider. We're going to be looking at the Fireside Poets, one of them specifically, the Fireside Poets, for those that don't know, were a group of poets that existed around the late 1800s who were known for writing about like mythology, American life, stuff like that, and they adhered very strictly to poetic forms, so following like ABAB structure, or in this case what I'm going to talk about today is ABBA structure, just not trying to break the rules at all and just trying to have a good time while writing about poetry and other such things. But interestingly, what I found when I was looking it up is although people loved the Fireside Poets at the time, history hasn't exactly been kind to them, because in looking at like poet anthologies, they're largely excluded or minimized their impact, despite the fact that around the late 1800s they had such a following, which is unusual to say the least. Especially since a couple of those poets were still alive around that time. So imagine like being told, oh, your contributions were minimal at best. That would certainly, infuriate me, to say the least. So today I wanted to talk about a poet from the Fireside School of poets, known for really writing poetry and not much else. I'm going to be talking about Daily Trials by a Sensitive Man by Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. And you might be, saying to yourself, isn't that a judge? Wasn't he a judge? What's he doing writing poetry? And the answer is, you're thinking of his son, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who, interestingly enough, was appointed by, I believe, Theodore Roosevelt, and he largely helped enforce his trust-breaking policies, helping to break a number of trusts and being a very pro-labor judge, which is always nice. You definitely need that when many employees were being exploited back then. So not a lot to say about his father, but it's certainly a lot of this poem that I'm going to be talking about today is a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's read it. This is Daily Trials by a Sensitive Man, a poem which I feel gets at the it's all too loud, stop the earth, I want to get off emotion that some people might be feeling, by, again, Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. Oh, there are times when all this fret and tumult that we hear do seem more stale than to the sexton's ear his own dull chimes. Ding dong, ding dong, the world is a simmer like a sea over a pent volcano, woe is me. All the day long, from crib to shroud, nurse o'er our cradles screameth lullaby, and friends in boots tramp round us as we die, snuffling aloud. At morning's call, the small-voiced pug dog welcomes in the sun, and flea-bit mongrels, wakening one by one, give answer all. When evening dim draws round us, then the lonely caterwaul, tart solo, sour duet, and general squall, these are our hymn. Women with tongues like polar needles ever on the jar, men plugless word spouts whose deep fountains are within their lungs. Children with drums strapped round them by the fond paternal ass, peripatetics with a blade of grass between their thumbs. Vagrants, whose arts have caged some devil in their mad machine, which grinding squeaks with husky groans between, come out by starts. Cockneys that kill, thin horses of a Sunday, men with clams, hoarse as young bisons roaring for their dams from hill to hill. Soldiers with guns, making a nuisance of the blessed air, child-crying bellmen, children in despair, screeching for buns. Storms, thunders, waves, howl, crash, and bellow till ye get your fill. Yea, sometimes rest, men never can be still, but in their graves. So I rather like this poem because, again, it gets at the stop the world, I want to get off, there's too much going on at once. The feeling that, is ever present today when you're constantly hearing about various crimes committed by the president and his friends and various wars and the internet is a luxury. The internet is very cool, but sometimes it allows us to experience too much. Which I feel is like what Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. is getting at, even if he didn't have access to the internet back in the 1800s. Although, he was alive when they were inventing telegraphs, the phone was being invented, photographs were being invented, you were starting to experience more and more of the world rather than your local community, or maybe even if you were lucky, you had access to the nationwide news. So that's the first thing I noticed from the poem. Another is the imagery that he builds up when trying to describe how tumultuous the world is. He says, "The world is in a simmer like a sea over a pent volcano. Woe is me all the day long." So it's like you get like the world just like it's on top of a stove. Like he's describing a stove without having access to the stove imagery. So I really like that, and it's like, can you imagine like being there, like everything kind of bubbling up and it becoming overbearing and then too much, and then finally everything just explodes every single day. Another thing I noticed about this poem is, he's describing like different times in our life. He says from crib to shroud, from men to women. Particularly with men, he says, men plugless word spouts whose deep fountains are within their lungs. And I think just calling men blowhards, it's hilarious. But like at different parts of our life, like it's all too much. It never stops. For example, from crib to shroud, nurse o'er our cradles screameth lullaby, and friends and boops trend round us as we die, snuffling aloud. So like, even at birth, it's a lot, and it doesn't cease, and it just goes until we're dead. And even after we're dead, like this is going to continue long forever on, and we're just going to be like, we're just like one small part of a grander scheme where the noise just keeps growing, and it's hard to be a sensitive person, Daily Trials of by a Sensitive Man. And then the last thing that I want to highlight is storms, thunders, waves. The final verse. Storms, thunders, waves, howl, crash, and bellow till you get your fill. Yes, sometimes rest. Men never can be still, but in their graves. So I think what that's getting at is how he's saying, it's a lot to deal with. However, human beings in general, like they're very tumultuous themselves. Like they can't be still, and like so you may wish for like life to be a bit quieter, but is that what you really want? Not. He would argue no. Like we can wish for that, but it would never be okay with us because we have to keep going. We have to keep moving. It's we have to make the noise and be loud and stuff. So in a way, like the title is a bit of a paradox, because is there such thing as a sensitive man, a sensitive person, in this tumultuous society? Not really. I don't think so. I think he's highlighting how to be sensitive is a contradiction when you can't even be still, and when society is constantly pressuring you to make as much noise as possible, and when you're being forced to listen to all of this noise. If you disagree with that, feel free to, comment below. I would always love to hear from you. And if, in general, feel free to comment below if you read this poem before, or if you read it now and you want to say something that you caught that maybe I did not notice. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we can get Poetry Thursday off to the masses and people can learn about the Fireside Poets, a group that history has collectively decided to forget. Until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and 18th century, well, technically 19th century travels. Farewell.